have to be very aware of what you're putting in there. And I know that that sounds very cliche. So garbage in, garbage out, goodness in, goodness out. And it starts with, if you're mindful about what you're putting in your mouth, you're going to be mindful what you put on your body, what you put in your, what you're going to consume by looking and listening. And I wish that I could be more definitive about stitching it all together into a beautiful tapestry. You probably can do that for me. Why don't you stitch it together even better than I just did?
Knit one, purl two. Yeah, I mean, it is all interconnected because once you start, okay, it's like dominoes. Once you knock the first one over, then you're like, wait a minute. And you're never going to get it all at once. You're never going to get it all. But I found it, and I had a client who, I'm stealing her phrase, epiphanies come in waves.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a little something, you're like, wait a minute, that could apply over here. I've noticed, because I'm aware that I'm not waking up rested, as an example. So, let's look back through my journal, whether it's paper, on my phone, whatever. Bedtime, 11:30 for the last 3 weeks. What did I do before I went to bed? I was on my phone, or I was watching TV, or let's look at that. And let's be mindful of what's going in. Now, if I was reading a book, okay, maybe back the time, all these things, because then that will translate into more restful sleep, more deeper sleep, which means you're going to wake up with more energy. And you can go out and get some sunlight, and then your day will just get better and better in an ideal world, in a closed system. But you become aware of one thing, then another, and then another. And then you get the big, shocking, apparent differences when you take song lyrics from today and compare them and read them, like poetry. Song lyrics from today versus song lyrics from, the Great American Songbook from the 30s, 40s, even early 50s. There's no comparison. They don't write songs like that anymore. Most of the stuff today is, Sunday school words that you ought not say in mixed company. And the others are alliteration and metaphor and analogy. And it's, they actually had something to say. So you look at it, you're like, whoa, I'm much more aware now of what I'm putting into my ears.
Mm-hmm.
I'm much more aware of what I'm putting into my eyes and my brain. And then it all touches everything else. Everything is going to touch it at some point. It's just a matter of, are you dialing into that frequency of the connectedness? And I think it's almost like a big circle, like, sonar. Everyone's, seen those on movie. And imagine that circle gets smaller and smaller as you mature and you become more aware. That circle is so much smaller. Now you can really focus in and see how they're all connected to each other. And it's just like right there in front of you. So that's a visual that I like. It's that's the sonar readout that just gets progressively smaller with awareness.
Yeah.
Now, what about this is a big one, I think. What about blind spots? Because I can look at my journal and I can rationalize, excuse-ize.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do about blind spots?
Well,
I don't know that I don't know, or I choose not to see that.
I think that's where it can be very helpful to have a coach or a therapist or somebody who can ask you probing questions, because we don't like to sit in our own discomfort for very long, and so we will rationalize and we will not address it. And I that's part of procrastination is, you're just not ready to deal with something that needs to be dealt with in the moment. So you put it off till later, with the being so audacious to think that you're going to have the opportunity to do it later, right? Because later may not present itself for dealing with this particular problem if you can deal with it.
Or the word you used earlier, the hubris.
Yeah.
I got this. I can handle this.
Right. I've got time. So I think introspection. I mean, you have to be brutally honest. You have to be willing to tell yourself the brutal truth about things. And I think that's where journaling helps, because you may not know what it is that you don't know. You know that there's something missing. You're
Yeah.
not quite sure what it is. And then, like for me, for instance, years ago, I think I was like 52. It was a while ago, 52 or 53. I gave myself a gift certificate to go to hot yoga. Like I'd never done yoga before. And it was a 2 week, 29 bucks, 2 weeks, 29 bucks, 3 days a week. And I had a friend who said, if you go, I'll go.
Mm-hmm.
And so we held each other accountable. And at the end of the 2 weeks, I was like, this is the missing link. This is what I didn't know that I didn't know. And I did it. And so much so that I went on to study it to deepen my own personal practice. And, that has led me to the understanding that I have now. Sadly, I haven't been able to be on the mat, which I know that that's what's missing out of my life, because I've been told by my doctor who's treating my TMJ dysfunction not to do yoga because of the strain and, that it would put, and you would think, this is a medical doctor telling me not to exercise, which is essential for my health. How long am I going to have to ignore this essential part of my life before the benefit of not doing it, ends up becoming a detriment, right? And so do you exercise anyway and deal with chronic pain? Or do you not exercise to help you do, it's just one of those things. So I think that getting back to like how you figure out what it is that you don't know, or how you identify what's missing and identify your own blind spots. I think you need feedback from a trusted friend,
That's
somebody who knows you.
trust. It's
Trust.
got to be trust.
There has to be trust, because if someone comes to you and says, I need for you to help me with, tell me the brutal truth, you want somebody who is going to do that in a kind and loving way, who isn't going to go to the next a women's club meeting or down to the country club and say, la 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 la.
You'll never guess what they just told me in confidence.
Right. So, and then that can be stressful, like trying to find the sounding block. So sometimes you do have to go to a professional who it's their job to hold this confidence and to be the safe sounding board for you. And hopefully we provide a little bit of that in the community. We try to hold space for people, and we're not judgmental, and what is said in the community needs to stay in the community. And I would think it's a pretty safe place to go, because I don't know that too many people know each other outside the community. I mean, some of us have, multiple friends within the community that we're friends with outside the community, but, it's all about, communication. You have to communicate this, whether you're thinking it, or you're journaling it, or you're speaking it to someone through formal therapy or coaching or something like that. But I think that's a very important part of it. I don't think you can just think your way through it. I don't think this is something that you can just concentrate on. And I think there's more action than just thinking about it. This is something that you need to put into action. It's a thought that becomes an action that leads to change behavior.
And just like, sometimes, your bestie might be a little too close and might not want to hurt your feelings with the truth. Sometimes you need a little distance. Well, before we go the other way, who knows you better than you? Who's going to be more coddling of yourself than yourself sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
Again, that could also fall under blind spots. But sometimes you got to go even further out. Not sometimes to a total stranger, licensed therapist, nutritionist, physical trainer, whatever, to get out of that area where you're not as familiar. But sometimes there's an in-between. When I went through a divorce, I had a lot of people that were really close, and they all had their opinions. They all had their sides to the story, and some were, very coddling and very, understanding. And they wanted to go along with a certain way and be a certain have some neutrality, but
Mhm.
they couldn't. So I
Right.
had a friend who I wasn't super duper close to, but I trusted him very
Mhm.
well, and I knew he was a straight shooter. And what he said, I could take to the bank, and I knew that that was what I needed to hear. As uncomfortable as that was, as much change as it was going to involve. So yeah, going to someone who's maybe not necessarily the whole extreme of a total stranger, but sometimes that inner circle is just too close to a situation. So you got to go in somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, a trusted source who can give you effective feedback and valuable feedback because, if the feedback is coming from somebody that, you know, unsolicited advice, no one wants that, but solicited advice from a trusted source, that feedback can be invaluable, especially if you're willing to be open to it.
Yeah, you have to be open to change. That's the other thing.
Yeah, and ready to change, and you have to do it for yourself. So anybody watching this who says, "Oh, my cousin or my spouse or my mother needs to do this," like, well, you need to inspire them to want to do it and let them come to that decision
Right.
on their own, not because you're nagging them to the point, because no one likes that.
Yeah, the standard, they're not ready, but that just means you can't want it for somebody else more than they want it for themselves.
Right.
Anyone who's ever had children understands that.
Yeah.
You want
Um,
them to do something, but they got to want to do it.
Yeah, like, one of the classic lines I used when I was coaching is, "I can't drag you kicking and screaming over the finish line,
Hmm.
but I can run with you every step of the way."
I can even be right behind you in your ear saying, "You got this, you got this, you got." But
Right,
if you're back there, it makes no difference.
right, and so it's so very important for us to realize that the things that we say to ourselves and the things that we say to others goes back to that stimulus and response and the pause. You need to think long and hard before you verbalize things because once they've been said, they can't be unsaid. You can apologize. You could say, "Oh, I could have said that better." And you'd be 100% sincere. But your child or your spouse or your friend can't unhear the unkind words that you said. And the same thing happens when you speak unkindly to yourself.
Hmm.
Just as you said, your brain and your body does not know the difference between a lie and the truth, right? So I am beautiful. I am smart. I am kind. These are the ways that we should speak to ourselves. I am smart. Um, and then you leave it at that. There's no qualifier. But
Right.
sometimes I, but
It's
sometimes
just
I,
don't sabotage yourself, because
right.
you're sabotaging yourself.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, yeah, we're talking mindfulness and focus attention on the now. That's the other thing. Affirmations, put them in the present tense.
Hmm.
Put them productive and in the present tense. Because I love this analogy. If I was going to go from Western North Carolina, I was going to drive to New York City. I'm going to New York. Okay. I'm going through Virginia. I'm going to New York. Going through Pennsylvania. I'm going to New York. If I'm always going, I never get there. I'll never get there. But guess what? If I'm aware of my surroundings, I am. If I am uh, a good steward of my money, I am. If I am, if I put good food into my body, that's that's what I do. It's who I am, not who I'm going
Hmm.
to be. Yes, we have aspirations. We know where we were. We know where we want to go. We plan. But I am right here. That is my mindset, because that's all I've got is right now.
Yeah.
Past is past. Future's not here. I am here right now. I am. Period.
Yeah. I follow the proper human diet and I am metabolically healthy. And you speak that into existence that way.
Mm-hmm.
You don't qualify it with anything. You speak it and you speak as though it is given. And when you pray, isn't there a verse if people refer to the Bible is it's a I think it's a wonderful teaching tool, and there's great advice in there, regardless of whether you are a Christian or you practice a
Sure.
different faith. I think it says pray as though it has already been given, doesn't it?
Speak those things that are not as though they are.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. See?
Never
So
read that. And the book that we've talked about it before, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself.
Mhm,
That's even got strategies for programming your own self-talk.
mhm.
And one of the highlights was present tense. There's different levels. Great book. Shad Helmstetter, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself.
And I think you turned me onto that book, and I think it's free in the
On Audible.
catalog. I think it is. I think it was. So what happens to me many times is I'll hear someone discuss a book. I'll be listening to a podcast or reading a study or something, and somebody will mention a book, and I'll immediately stop and look it up. I can't tell you the number of times the books that I've looked at on Audible, no, they've been free on Audible Plus, and I'm like, the universe cannot get any clearer to me that I need to read that book. It's like there's no roadblock for why. I mean, read, turn it on, put the earphones on, go multitask and listen to that book.
Turn off the TV because it's mostly garbage.
Well, and I don't watch TV, and I am staying with some friends, and they watch TV, and we were watching it, and they said, "You don't watch TV, do you?" I said, "No, I really don't." And they said, "Have you ever seen this show before?" And I'm like, "No, I really haven't." And I don't feel sheltered, and I don't miss anything, and important
Mhm.
stuff finds its way to me, and I don't miss it now. And for 30 minutes sitting to watch a TV show, do you know what I can accomplish in 30 minutes? Do you know how many searches I can do in PubMed in 30 minutes,
Mhm.
or how many note or things that I can write? I can outline an assignment in 30 minutes. So I just look at how I'm using my time differently. Where before I could sit and binge watch something, but now, I really don't feel like that's an effective use of my time. But that's not to say there's not a time and a place to binge watch.
Sure.
If I'm sick with a migraine, laying in the bed waiting for the pain to stop, yes, I may put a loop on and listen to something for a while, right? But all of this is about being mindful of how you're spending your time, what you're nourishing yourself with spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and what. Go ahead.
Oh, you spurred on another quick thought. There's a huge difference, especially and in the book that I read too. There's a difference between condemnation, whether it's from outside or from within, and conviction.
Mm,
It's one thing to say you shouldn't binge watch TV. You shouldn't do that. That's every time you use the word "should" on someone else, think about that.
mhm.
Versus, I'm just going to watch another episode. Well, I'm just going to watch another episode. 5 episodes later, you get the conviction of, okay, I'm aware that probably was not a good decision. Note to self, don't make that decision again. Rethink that. So self-forgiveness is also a part of this whole equation, because that's part of the self-discovery of the thoughts, the emotions that come into your head, into your thinking.
Right. And then that's when you can use the words, I don't do that anymore. It was okay that I did that, but I don't do that anymore. I forgive myself. And you just move on, and don't feel guilty about it. And don't feel guilty guilt is a useless emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It steals the joy from your present moment, feeling guilt about something that is over and done.
Mm-hmm.
And then you dwell on it, and it steals the joy from your present moment. And
It takes you out of the present.
it does. It
Keeps you in the past.
Yeah. But that's not to say that you can't recognize what you did and then just don't do it again. I mean, don't be in denial and don't deny it,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't let it dominate. I've seen too many people.
I heard it a couple different ways, and the ways I like is they say, see the past, whether it's victories or mistakes, see them in black and white, not in vivid color.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the way that you can, forget the details, but learn the lesson.
Right. Yep.
And that way you're not living there. The present is the vivid color,
Yeah.
and then you plan for the future. So how does this, let's land the plane. We're trying to be mindful of everything with a proper human diet and lifestyle. So that's going to incorporate food. It's going to incorporate sleep hygiene. It's going to incorporate activity and rest. It's going to incorporate thought process and mindfulness. How can we, if you could put a bow on that, what are some couple practical steps that someone could take right now? They say, yep, that all makes sense. I want to start doing that. What can somebody do as soon as they hit the stop button on this?
Wow. Geez, that's not a tough question. Well, it just starts with the very next, it starts with the very next, with the proper human diet, it starts with the very next meal that you are about to make for yourself. And then the thoughts around it, how you feel when you're consuming it, how you feel when you were making it. And this seems very contrived and very, like, geez, you're making this more complicated than it needs to be. But actually what will happen is it will just become second nature to you, that you choose to nourish your body properly. You're choosing to treat yourself in a kinder, gentler way. And it starts with being present in the moment. And then when you're faced with a choice after dinner of watching something on TV with the family or taking the family on a walk, it may seem really awkward and silly at first, and the family's moaning and groaning and saying, this is dumb, we don't want to do this. And then before you know it, it becomes a blessed family thing that they complain when you don't do it anymore. But it's always awkward at first when you're trying to learn a new way. And when you say to yourself, oh, it's not going to make that big of a difference if I don't have to do that this time. Yeah, you do. You do need to. Yes, it does make a big difference. It does make a difference that you decide today's the day I'm putting my shoes on after dinner and I'm taking a walk. Because what'll happen is in your mind, this is what you're saying, whether you want to admit it or not. This one time isn't going to make a bit of difference. But what happens is you come back, you notice that you feel better and that you're a little more energized and you sleep a little bit better at night. And if you're wearing a CGM, you notice what it did, what your blood sugar happened to that. And then you're like, well, I'm going to do that again tomorrow. And then you do it tomorrow. And then you do it the third time and the fourth time. And then there's that one time that you can't do it for a legitimate reason. Something came up and you can't do it. And you notice how you felt about it. And then that's when you go to the journal and you go, I walked for 5 days in a row and my my blood sugar was doing this and I slept better and this and this. And then I missed it because of something happened. And the next day I felt different. Then what has happened is you have now gone from doing this one time isn't really going to make that much difference to, oh my goodness, this is now how I am. This is what I do after dinner. Weather permitting, this is what I do. And even if the weather isn't permitting, you can put a hat on and go.
We got umbrellas.
Exactly. So that's just part of the stories that we tell ourselves, the excuses that we make, that this one time won't matter and it's okay if I skip it. I can't tell you the number of times I've snuggled down in my bed and I'm all snuggled, ready to go. And I go, oh, you forgot to do blah, blah. Oh, it'll be okay. You don't have to. And then I say out loud, that's not true. You cannot skip it. Get up and go do that thing that you know that you're supposed to do. So it's because it's a part of me now. And I could not have gone to sleep by skipping it. So that's how it starts out. It starts out with, I'm not sure this is going to lead to anything, to, oh, wow, my whole life is different now. I've done a 180 from where I was before. So it just starts with recognizing that you want to make a change, being aware of when the opportunities present themselves where you can make that change. And then you're rewiring yourself to a whole new you. Eventually you're going to say, well, I can't believe that I ever did fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
So
And you look back over your shoulder, you say, I can't believe how far I've come.
that's right.
And whether it's take every thought captive or whether it's simply stop and smell the roses, stop and smell the roses, stop, assess the situation. And that's how you start to retrain yourself. And then another great book that I love is The Slight Edge. He talks about uh, errors in judgment compounded over time versus right decisions compounded over time.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, they're easy things that are easy to do and easy not to do. But like you just said, you get into that habit of doing them, this just becomes who you are.
Yeah, and I know that we don't need to go off on another tangent, but one thing that could be a subject for us on a future video is the power of saying no. Okay, so you have got to, sometimes you have to evaluate what's going on in your life, and you belong to a particular club and you do this thing and you participate in this and you have your life schedule, and then you realize that every time you have to go do XYZ, you feel anxiety or you feel dread, or you're like, oh, I really have other things I need to be doing. You need to stop in that moment and say, what am I getting from doing this? And 4 years ago, when I started doing this, it was a great joy in my life. But now I recognize that it is causing me anxiety. And it's okay for me to say, I can't be in your club anymore. I'm going to resign. And I love you guys, but it just isn't serving me well. It doesn't fit my schedule like it did. And I'm in a different place.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Now I've had to, and every now and then you've got to do a spring cleaning of your life schedule. Okay. And it's okay to say no. And it's okay to say no when someone invites you to something. And I look at my schedule, and if it is a Tuesday at 5:00 that I need to be somewhere that's an hour away, I can't do that on a Tuesday. I'm like, no, I'm really sorry. Thank you so much for the invite. Please include me on the next invite as well.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that one day it fits my schedule. But if you invite me at 5:00 and it's a Saturday and it's something I want to do, I'm there. Why? Because I don't have to worry about there's too many moving parts for me to worry.
Right.
And don't be the wishy-washy friend that says, oh, I'll let you know. No, you know right now that the answer is no. You need to say no. Why? Because they may have somebody else they want to invite. And if you're being that wishy-washy one, there could be an empty seat at their dinner table because you messed up the dinner foursome by not showing up. So that, like I said, you have to realize these are ways that stress and the things that trigger you can be entering your life that you really even weren't aware of. And you're like, yeah, I really should quit the whatever club because I just don't have time for it anymore. It's not serving me. Because here's the bottom line. Everybody has time. It's how you choose to allot your time.
Yep.
So when someone says, I don't have time for that, you need to read that as, no, I'm not interested in that. And if people were being truthful, they would say that. It's like, Mitzi, do you want to join the Italian cooking club? No, really, I don't have any interest in that because I don't think there's much I could eat, in that club. And who's going to be offended by that answer? So you probably edit most of this out, but the point is, people need to realize where they need to say no.
Mm-hmm.
They want to say yes but really the answer is no. And everyone is better off when you say no, when you mean no.
Yeah, because then you avoid all the anxiety and the awkwardness.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing is another book I mentioned to you is How to Build a Non-Anxious Life by Dr. John Deloney.
Okay.
And you mentioned anxiety, and he said, yeah, anxiety. Think of when if your house were to catch on fire, you've got smoke alarms going off all over the place. That's anxiety. So you could take the battery out of the smoke alarm, but the fire is still there. Mm-hmm. So what's behind the anxiety? That's where this mindfulness, meditation, journaling, being aware, including foods and all of this stuff, when you bring it all to bear, can help lower all of that, which guess what? Physiologically, You lower stress, you're gonna be much better off. Your metabolism is going to thank you.
For sure.
Your sleep will go up. So again, a rising tide raises all the ships.
Agreed.
So we'll put a bunch of links in here for people that want to do some reading. And now you told me before we started recording that how many hits on a cognitive behavioral therapy did you see at PubMed, just on a quick?
Yeah, it was like 8,700 and some. 8,720.
That's a lot for something that's kind of woo-woo.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There might be something to it.
There might be. Just saying.
Just saying. Well, Mitzi, thank you so much. I know we took some time, and it's always fun to talk to you because there's never a dull moment.
I know. I agree.
But yeah, so we'll get this up. We'll let people know how they can get in touch with a coach, a therapist, not a therapist, but someone they need to talk to. We got plenty of people in the PhD community if they need to bounce some ideas by somebody, how they can apply this to diet, exercise, lifestyle. So, Mitzi Champion, thank you very much.